Okay.
So
I want to let everyone know in the public that if you're viewing, should you wish to address the board on a topic, you may do so by either calling 315-591-5511 and leave a message, which will be handed off to the board. Or you may write the board at clerk@fulton.cnyric.org. And we will get back to you as soon as practicable. Would someone now move item 1.04?
move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeJarme,
Yes.
and Mrs. Lyons.
Yes.
Item 1.05,
Move it.
Move it.
Second.
discussion. Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mr. DeJarme,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons.
Yes.
Very good. Okay.
All right, under President's reports, do you have any questions regarding the upcoming August meetings? All right, and NYSBA convention update is that it is going to be a virtual convention, as you probably already read. Mrs. Perry's already taken care of dealing with hotel cancellations. And we will keep you apprised as we have more detail come forward. Any questions regarding the convention?
Just, and I may have missed this, is there still a fee of any kind involved?
We don't know yet. We haven't heard anything, David.
All right.
So we can let you know, or I will probably all find out about the same time because they typically email most all of us.
I'm representing city as well, so I will let them handle it, just so Jean knows if there's anything that needs to be taken care of.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, I'll let city handle it.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn this over now to Superintendent Polvino.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here on our second meeting in July, which we sometimes have, and sometimes we don't. So thank you for supporting doing this meeting. A couple of things very briefly on our summer school extended school year. We got back in person last Thursday. I've visited all the sites. I learned how to follow the arrows of the yellow brick road in one of the classrooms on how we move around the room. It goes right along with some of the guidance that we're seeing from the state about orientation, about moving around classrooms, spaces, orientation with respect to hygiene, things like that in the classroom. So it was a really neat experience. It was in one of our 611 classrooms. So that was a neat kind of experience that day that I had. And it was great to see the kids and the staff re-engaged. And so we're hoping that continues. And we're learning a lot each and every day from that program. Also, our interim commissioner will be in Fulton on Thursday. She's tentatively scheduled to be here at 11 a.m., which is kind of an interesting time because that's our dismissal time of our morning program. But I'm gonna have a meeting tomorrow with our coordinating team. And what I'd like the opportunity is for them to share their experiences, the staff to share their experiences that they've gone through, share the orientation piece that we did with them, give them some information, and then they can actually see our kids arriving for the noon session. And so that'll work out quite well. So I don't know if any board members are interested. Just let me know. Obviously, we're trying to keep the volumes down, but if you're interested in coming and meeting the commissioner, as well as Chris Suriano, who is the associate commissioner for special education for the state of New York. They are tentatively scheduled to be here. We're going to meet at Lanigan at 11 a.m. So that's any questions around our extended school year. We've had 42 kids signed up. Things have been going very well. I spoke to Patrick today. The busing is working well. And we're feeling really good about the start. And interesting in some of our conversations around reopening. We're actually drawing upon our experiences and feeling good that we have at least some things that we've at least got that we can hopefully take to capacity as we move forward this summer and into the fall. If there's no questions about that, I'd like to move into the capital improvement project. Any questions about extended school year? All right. And if you'd like to attend, just send Jean an email or let me know, either one of us, and gladly would welcome you to participate if you'd like to. Our capital improvement project, I asked, if you didn't know, we've gone through the process. We had got our approvals. We put our bids out. We were asked to do an extension. Originally, it was earlier in July, the 7th, but we moved it to the 14th. We had a bid opening on the 14th. And this evening, we have LaChase here. We have Gary Herbert and Barbara McKetta. And we have Carrie Tiroli and Mike James from King and King. So, Bob, do you want to go first, or how do you want to go about doing this evening? Or Gary, I'm not sure who wants to speak.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gary. You want me? I think I'm hearing myself. I don't know. I'm repeating somewhere.
Go ahead, Bob.
So yeah, we had the like Brian mentioned, we had our bid opening on this past Tuesday. I think we had a pretty successful bid. We had a lot of bidders, especially on the site portion. We had 10 bidders. The top 4 were actually all within about 72,000 of each other. So we felt good about the numbers we had. I'm not sure how much in detail you want me to go into. I know Brian has sent you the summary sheets of all the bid tabs. You've gone through some options regarding alternates, which is really, the big decision that we need to that the board is going to need to discuss. But for the most part, in most of the scenarios, what you're going to wind up with is let me just go to, where am I here? Just starting with the general contractor, we're looking at S.J. Thomas as the low bidder, regardless of kind of what alternate scenarios we look at. HVAC was Nary Mechanical out of Rochester area. Electrical contractor is Knapp Electric. They're from Auburn. And then plumbing contract was HMI. And all of those bidders, even with various combinations of the alternates that we had in the bid, are pretty much set. The only variable will be the site contract. Site contractor, we had a single alternate for work at Lanigan. All the site work there. And if we choose to proceed with the site work at Lanigan, at this time, the low bidder would be Lanco. And if we hold off and decide not to proceed with Lanigan, the low bidder would be Paul F. Vitale. All contractors that we know and have worked with before, or have even worked with people we know, we've done a bid review with all of them, including both site contractors, just to be sure that based upon whatever decisions you make, and they've all acknowledged and provided backup to the numbers that they have given in the bid, and they feel confident that scope is fully gathered in their bid pricing. I'm not sure what other information you might want, Brian.
Bob, with option number 3 that we had talked about, which was Lanigan site work only, is that correct? That's option 3?
Yeah, option 3 was basically all of the office work and all of the site work. So all three sites going, and all three of the office renovations.
And the scope of work this summer out of that on option 3 would be just Lanigan site work if we chose to do that. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. So Lanigan would start as soon as we can. It would go into the fall, but I think we've had discussions about it, and it's isolated enough, and Lanigan's the one site where it's all new, so we're not impacting whatever the current configuration of bus and parents. So it would have the least impact on any work, and it would allow us just, to at least get something going and something done, and not compiling everything into next summer.
And if we chose not to do that job, which was part of the discussion, although was on, what's today? Today's on Tuesday. On Friday, if we weren't going to do that this year, that would be $600,000 more to play with. Right now, we're over budget by what? I believe in option 3 was $1.5 million. Is that correct? I can put that up on the screen if you need to.
Yeah, in option 3, with again, including that landing and site work, we were about 1.5 million over what the original anticipated SCD budget was for at the time of the vote. Which at this.
Can you just give a brief overview as to why? Obviously, it's obvious, I think, with the COVID, but can you just give a brief overview as to why that would be, why our costs are about $1.5 million more? Now you have to remember that means that there's $1.5 million less than, if you will, as we go into phase 2. But if Bob, if you could just give a brief overview of that, please.
Yeah, I think a portion of that and is because, number one, the vote was 2018. So I think in those numbers there are assumptions for escalation, but really over the past 2 years, the construction industry and pricing has really it's elevated, I think, well beyond what was anticipated. Also, part of that 1.5, just so we're clear, is that there is contingency in that. So there is approximately between what's in the contracts and outside contract contingency for the unknowns is probably close to $500,000.
Am I reading correctly that the document that was sent to us, titled option 3, really shows almost 1.9 million over? Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, that's the
yeah,
that we have. Mhm.
No, I don't think so. The option 3 that we're looking
There's
at.
a million. What I'm seeing is 1,890,000.
Yeah, David's right. This is the one that you had sent us before. I'm wondering, is this? I'm going to look. Go ahead and keep talking, Bob. I'm not sure you gave me the right one.
There was an original one, and then I thought I sent you the one that we revised for Saturday.
No.
I mean for Friday.
I'm going to show one. Just to give me a moment, please, Bob. If you could continue and explain why we chose to do it in. Where we chose to do the extended projects to break out into alternates, and I'm going to find this from you.
Okay. If not, I will resend it.
Brian, I have it. Can I share my screen? Is that?
If it's possible, Carrie, you can give it a try.
Let me try.
Oh yeah, I have it too. What do you do? The present now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob. Since you're speaking, control it.
No,
Thank you, David, for catching that. Thank you.
Hold on a second. Got to figure out which. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, we see that. Oh, wait, not yet.
No problem. I just was wondering.
Bob, can you make that any
I know
larger?
that-
Thank you.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. On the one that you're looking at next to construction contingency, does it say 10%?
Construction contingency, 10%. Yes.
Yeah, that was the original. That was our original that we forwarded, and then what we did is there's already allowances within the contracts. So within all these contracts, there's allowances, and what we did is we backed out those allowances, and then added the construction contingency. So we have a total of 8%, which is inclusive of what's in here. So this is the more realistic number of what there is. So that's the 1.5 that we were looking at right here.
Okay.
And again, that 1.5 includes this 328,000 plus about another 280,000 within the contracts for contingency of unknowns. As you go through buildings like we're going to be doing, there are going to be some unknowns, and we try and minimize that, but sometimes it's unstoppable. So
Bob, just for a minute. Brian, I think that I want to answer the question that, or try to describe why we broke the bid into two options or the multiple bid process, which was discussed prior. This is Gary. What we've done is they've gone into two phases, phase one and phase two is your bid process.
Yep.
The strategy behind that is that it allows you to bid the one section of SED approved documents and allowing you to get your work started. The idea was that the district would want to see work get started, so we phased and created a two-phase project. This also allows you the opportunity to engage contractors early on rather than wait for the entire thing to get approved. And it sets in place the idea that we can bid alternates that will help you in trying to define the budget. Keep in mind the budget that Bob was talking to was a few years ago, and that's when the numbers were developed. And so when we looked at it, we looked at that number and we said, let us do an estimate. And we knew that there was a potential for some problems. So what we did is we took all the work, the scope of work that we felt that could be isolated in this phase, and we broke it into alternates, add alternates, so that the district could then make decisions based on the real numbers of those items so that they could then isolate and still go forward. That allows the district to have the intent of what they ultimately wanted was to look at the entire scope of work. How much they could purchase was all based on what the bidders, not anyone else, but what the bidders actually placed a dollar value on. That all being said, the one sticky wicket that's in all of this is COVID, and the contractors at this time, regardless of the time of year, are a little apprehensive. And there's a lot of issues with the supply chain. Construction relies on the supply chain. The supply chain has been disseminated, if you will. In the spring, there were many operations mechanically and other things across the country that all shut down, and there was no production. That's to say nothing of the stuff that comes in from overseas that's been caught at borders and that hasn't moved, that went into delay. So contractors, as you can imagine, they became very cautious. And so they are still that way. And I don't think that's going to go away. And then there was the whole what the United States did by shutting down and people not going to work, created a condition that the labor forces got involved in. Now it's not just products, it's labor. And so that had its impact a little bit on what has happened with your buying power. So I want to describe that to you because you need to understand it's not just that the estimate was wrong. You have a condition that's evolved that's in the community of the bidding world that you're a part of. You're along for the ride. And so now we have to put you in a position by doing alternates the way we did it to allow you to make informed decisions so that you can choose either to go forward, to accept certain alternates, to accept certain contracts, or you may decide that there's something else that you want to look at. And that is up to the board. So we're trying to describe to you the apparent low bidders in this case and what scenarios and what it leaves you with. And I think the important piece to realize is what they're getting at is that there's a deficit. It's going to have an effect on your phase two. Doesn't mean we can't do the same thing with phase two. We would, and we would come back to you when that's appropriate to bid and allow you to see where the numbers are and see how much of that scope of work you want to pursue. Brian, did I cover what you wanted in that summary of that?
Yeah, that was very helpful. I think as we went into this, we wanted to be if you learn anything about me, I try to be rather conservative. Obviously, this is our first for my rodeo, and we have a board that we have two members that have been through a number of them. And we wanted to get this right. And I think the alternates was the right way to do this. And thank you for explaining the reasoning why the alternates, allowing us a little bit more flexibility And when our bid process was a little bit late in the game and coming into the summer as well, I do appreciate that we extended the bidding process as well. That being said, that the discussion really is the work we're talking about for this summer would be the Lanigan site work in 2020. And that's really, and one of the things I was looking back at my notes from the other day, and the comment we made was there was no savings to get it done any sooner. Now, Bob, you sent an email today with respect to, if we waited a year, because that was one of the things that was in the back of my mind was, do we wait and then really watch where this COVID thing goes, realizing that the Lanigan site work is being done because we do have safety concerns that have been there for a long time with respect to traffic flow. Yes. However, that's one of the pieces. That's why we did this project in the first place. However, we also have issues with COVID, and there's a lot of things around air handling and other kinds of projects, things like that, but I also know there may be some funding based on some things I've read lately. We'll see where that goes as far as the federal government. But what are your thoughts about if we waited a year, chances are this project could be $60,000 to $70,000. Is that what you indicated to me earlier today? I don't have my email right in front of me.
Yeah, but I mean, that was primarily based on the alternate numbers, and that and as Kerry pointed out, for certain reasons, you can't necessarily award that bid later, but because you're making budget decisions now and will be making changes along the way, it doesn't prevent you from awarding that work potentially at a later date. Whether it's through a change order to Vitale or whether it's we rebid it, there's no knowing what it might or might not be. Because basically what happens is,
in what direction?
Even though, well, if I want to explain what the reason that there's a difference in pricing is because Lanco, although their base bid is slightly higher, once you add their cost for the lower for the alternate is, so by awarding it to Lanco now compared to what Vitale's bid is with the alternate, Lanco is about $60,000 lower. So my point was that if we go to a Vitale, whether it's through a modified scope or whatever type of change later, there's the potential that what you're saving now could be absorbed and pay more later. I guess the whole point is if it's truly something that you're in your mind, you're saying you absolutely want to do, then you just have to contemplate whether you take the pricing, which is very competitive pricing now, or risk maybe paying more for it later. But again, you don't know. It's an unknown, and I know it's a very hard decision to try and make. And David, on the other side of that, if we don't proceed now, then there's really no construction happening that has anything to do with the project until next June.
Okay, David, I think you had a question. You were trying to ask a question. Dave, are you with us?
I just the number 60 to 70,000. I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
60 to 70,000 in what direction? Below, above?
More.
More. Okay.
Yeah, because if you, I can show you on this on.
I wouldn't. Isn't the question right at this point though? Isn't there a discussion here about what we're not going to do?
Right.
Because clearly we don't have enough money now to do everything we wanted to do initially.
Right. This is Carrie. At some point,
Yeah,
right, we have to confront that reality, Robin, that,
yes,
back 2 years ago, we thought we were going to do this scope of work for this dollar value. We started designing it and the pandemic hit. And then as Gary described, it severely affected, material pricing. It's now starting to impact the labor force. We're seeing contractors who are having difficulty getting people to come to work,
right,
for a variety of reasons, right? Fear of exposure, a variety of factors are playing into that. And as Gary described, pricing is now reflecting that. So unless we find another source of money, right, we have to scale back on the scope.
Yes.
based on what we know today. So I think one of the biggest questions is, do we want to commit money to Lanigan today to the site work, or are we willing to wait another year, and either take it as an alternate or a revised scope of work as Bob described, or bid it with phase 2 when we have more information. But it's a difficult, I think, question for you as a board, because there are still going to be so many things that change between now and then. And what other requirements is the state or the federal government going to impart that maybe we're going to need to try and pick up as part of the phase 2 project, right? Mr. Polvino started to describe, maybe we need to do more with air handling. Maybe we need to do more with ventilation instead of some of the site and safety concerns that were originally on our radar. And so do we just want to focus right now on the base bid work, which is for the most part, the secure renovations for 3 main offices, and put a pause on things like the Lanigan site work, the Volney roof, which was bid as an alternate as part of this phase, which we are not necessarily recommending you award today because that roof is in really good shape. And it, with everything else going on, let's look at that down the road in phase 2. Same with the Volney gymnasium floor. Things that we thought maybe were priorities 2 years ago might not be your priority today.
Dave, are you trying to ask a question?
I'm just wondering.
I'm not here. There you go. Okay.
And where was in the context of this problem that we should?
Dave, yes, I'm only getting bits and pieces. I don't know if anybody's getting all of what you're saying. I'm only getting a few words here and there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, most people are locked up, it looks like.
Okay, Dave, I heard you then. Well, let's try this again. No, I don't hear you, Dave.
Robin, I don't believe his icon is on there right now.
Again, I think the question's pretty simplified. There's going to be things we're not going to be able to do unless we go back out and ask for more money. So in the immediate, right now, tonight, if I can kind of summarize, the option 3 is the option that I think, Brian, you're most comfortable with.
Yeah, that's the one out of all the options. This is the one that seemed to make the most sense for the Fulton City School District. The issue really was, do we want to do the site work at Lanigan this year? I mean, that really, I think I left the conversation on Friday, feeling like, not knowing what's going on and looking at the fact that next year we know, for example, in the GRB phase 2 project, we know that there's an air handling system close to, I believe, 500,000. And then we also have a fire system that we've got to replace. So those two together are about 900,000. Plus we have the field renovation, which is a part of our capital reserves that we had indicated to the public many years ago that would be dedicated. And I know there's conversation about that, but that's what was shared with our community at that time. So you add those two pieces up, that's about 2.1 right there, just for those 3 projects. So, for me, in the remaining amount, which is at the bottom, correct, 5.288. Yeah. So we know right there, just those 3 projects are going to be 2 million, and not knowing what the federal government. So there was a question in my mind as to whether or not, we should move forward with the Lanigan site work, this year. I think either way we go, we know we have that's been a safety issue for many years. And obviously we wouldn't have proposed that project if we didn't believe it was something necessary. I think obviously the COVID has brought some external types of impacts on our district. And I think that impact, one of those impacts is, even in some of our initial surveys, in the feedback that we've gotten from families, is we're probably going to see an increase in the number of families that, if we are in session, that would be dropping their children off using their own vehicles and transport, perhaps using our bus service. I think we'd see an increase. So we may see increased traffic. However, that just puts in a situation where we need to be out there directing traffic and making sure that our families and our kids are safe as they enter.
Yeah, I think Dave.
Okay.
Yep, David's back.
I am. I just had a question with reference to the conversation about this year versus next year in the Lanigan work. Brian, what was the recommendation? What would your recommendation be with that? For whether we should move forward with that this year versus next year?
Yeah, I guess, obviously, the conservative side of me not knowing what we may need to be doing with our air handling and things like that. I mean, even the work, as Carrie alluded to, even doing the safety measures we're doing at main offices, are those the correct design for entering buildings for the future? I don't know. I mean, we'll have booths, we'll have things like that, but can you get a temperature through a booth? I don't know. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we'd need to be looking at, and, the positive in this is we didn't have a shovel in the ground. We have the ability we have some flexibility in these fluid times. The flip of that is there's a project that, we've said that to our community that we were moving forward with things, and we wouldn't be really doing anything in 2020. We would be moving forward to 21 with, however, I think more flexibility. And again, this is where my rookie status comes in. And I'd ask for Gary or Carrie to help with that. We have flexibility, even though we've been approvals on phase 1, we could put in for adjustments, correct? Is that correct or not? Gary or Carrie?
Yeah.
In scope or in schedule, Brian?
Well, scope and schedule, but scope in particular?
Yeah, you certainly don't have to bid we bid it all, but you certainly don't have to award everything that went to SED. And
Right.
King & King and LaChase have had success in the past rolling work that had SED approval in, say, phase 1 into a future phase 2 project, or even work that's part of another referendum. I know Dave was on the board when we originally bid some work at Granby as an alternate site work, didn't have the funds available to do it. And so that's actually been rolled into this current project, phase 2, the west side site work. So that's one of those things we keep designing and getting approval on and kind of kicking the can down the line. The other side of that is you can only do that, right, for so long. Similar thing happened with the junior high site work. The paving just kept not getting done because there were other things at the time that those funds had to be diverted towards. And then it really truly met the end of its useful life at that facility. So
that's right. So I can go either way. I guess that's my answer to you, Dave. I see both measures in it. $600,000 in a $15 million project is a good chunk of change when we may have to consider some things that we don't even know in some regulations or things that may come out for us to have to deal with. I mean, I get emails about UV light and different kinds of filter systems and all sorts of things all the time. And air handling is a big piece. And when you live in the northern part of New York State and they're telling you one of the things you can work on is ventilation, is opening the windows, that's great when it's 60 degrees outside, but it becomes a challenge when it's 0.
So Brian, may I ask this question? If I look at option 3, I'm in a similar place as you, but I'm thinking that the Lanigan site work, again, is something that is a safety. And rather than get into the interiors a lot, we know that at some of these buildings, the exterior doors need to be replaced no matter what we do. So could we go back and kind of pick through this and rather do the full interior site work? Do the site work that we know is going to happen whether we stay with the same design or not. And when I say about the design, we're rethinking the safety piece, because safety is now taking in a health portion that we didn't account for. So, but we could do the exterior door, certainly. I mean, I don't see how that would be impacted. Maybe it would. Carrie, you're the expert. I'm not.
I think what you're talking about is feasible. However, I'll have LaTroy chime in if they disagree. I think we would recommend that you would repackage it and rebid it, because right now we don't have this structured in a way that facilitates that. Certainly in any way that we can guarantee that you're getting a good value for work that we would have to deduct out of these contracts, right? So if we were to award to SJ Thomas and they think they're doing 3 main office renovations, and then we say, okay, hang on, we're going to scale this way back and really do 20% of that because there's still so many unknowns. It's really hard for you as a district to get that a full value credit back in a way that is productive and meaningful versus just taking a little bit of time to repackage and rebid something. Now, I say that like that's a quick turnaround. That's not. That will take King and LaChase a little bit of time. But if the group's, consensus is that these main office projects that we thought we needed to do are not what we need to do right now, 3-4 years down the road, no one's going to remember that we took another 4 or 6 or 8 weeks to get this right. They're just going to want to know that we got it right. So.
Yeah, Carrie's right on target. As far as if you're trying to dissect some of the work that's been designed in the work that would be awarded to these contractors, I can tell you over the years, we have not had great success in retrieving the dollars valued that the district would have if they just rebid. So if in fact the design in these offices don't reflect what you want, because that's what was bid and that's what was competitively bid, me sitting here advising the board that I could retrieve the right dollar value for you, I won't. I won't get it.
No. Plus the other thing too is outside of the landing site work, I mean, at this point, if you do decide that, I mean, even if you just kind of don't even just make any decision tonight, we're not losing schedule. I mean, we're not starting any of this till next June. So, I mean, our biggest concern will just be towards the beginning of next year, making sure that what we would consider long lead items like mechanical things and like that of the sort is ordered in time. So for us to sit back, or for even you to kind of gather all this information tonight and have to just kind of let it through for a little bit, it's like I said, outside of the potential of Lanigan site work in the immediate, there is time for more questions and more time to make those. So don't feel like you're forced into this timeline of the next 2 hours.
Right. We have 45 days. I mean, so the August 11th board meeting is still well within the 45 days. So we have some time to let this percolate. I mean, obviously, again, that's what I've been doing, a lot of thinking. And, that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around. I've been looking at the phase 2 work, what was there. And there are things associated with air handling and safety alarms, things like that we've got to get done. So, again, there's been a lot of work put into this project to this point. But at the same token, when we did most of this legwork up front, COVID didn't exist. And so that's the curveball that we got. And sometimes curveballs give us an opportunity. And I think we have an opportunity here, so that's what I've been, thinking a lot about. I mean, obviously, if we accepted that bid tonight, it means we're locked into our offices, correct, Carrie? Is that what that happens tonight?
Yes. I mean, essentially, we certainly could redesign them and scale them back, but as Gary described, you're not going to get the full value of the credit that you rightfully deserve if you're if you're uncomfortable with that move. I think King and LaChase would certainly recommend withholding and awarding at your next board meeting, or potentially not awarding at all and packaging up a project that's more comfortable.
Carrie, can you also explain that how site work is tied to the interior work, so everybody's
right.
done it?
Yeah, so at all your school buildings, in order for you to get any aid on your site work, parking lots, sidewalks, playfields, anything like that, you have to do at least $10,000 of worth of work in or on your building. So, we couldn't just send a project out to bid that is the Lanigan site work project without also doing maybe those windows by the gymnasium that were targeted for replacement, or some of the masonry restoration and repointing, or, work on doors in the main office.
Okay. And the other thing too is as far as repackaging, I think it's definitely doable, but I definitely I would not recommend trying to combine and push too much off to, like, say, the phase 2 as a total package, for two reasons. We're still in design development. We got to go through the whole SCD process, and we don't want to be pressuring ourselves with a timeline on SCD to determine when we can go out to bid. Secondly, it's much too large of a package to give to a single GC and single site guys, because it's a lot of work to get done. So I just want to put that out there. I know we weren't talking about it, but I don't think we would suggest doing something like that. I would think we would suggest repackaging what we have. If there's portions of this that we want to push off to phase 2, then that's understandable, but definitely not combining the two.
I want to make one more point for the board's consideration. When we're talking about repackaging, or the potential for repackaging and taking things out, that means we don't have to go back to the state education department. If for some reason we decide that there's a new need to do, renovations at the far end of Lanigan, which I believe is the pre-K entrance, for whatever reason, right? I'm making up a hypothetical scope. SED has not seen that yet or approved it. So if we come up with scope that's not presently part of phase 1, it'll have to go to SED.
So we can't add, but we can take away.
Correct. You can add, but again, that would be something to put into phase 2, which isn't
Without
currently
approval
on our radar for phase 2,
Yeah.
but may now be very appropriate in light of everything that's happening.
So let me just ask this, and I apologize because this is my first capital project that I've been on the board for.
Yeah.
Now, from what I understand, because of COVID and the current situation, we're paying a premium for materials and workers, and everything is really slim pickings right now. Is there a possibility to put the entire project on pause and wait a year and then reassess then and see what those numbers are? Because with our budget and our fiscal constraints that we've been facing in the districts and the cuts that we're having, these numbers make me uncomfortable at this time.
But how much are we getting in building aid for this that is not local dollars?
Yeah, Kathy, are you on the phone? Do you have quick access to your retiring debt? Because I know that you'll need to do some borrowing, you'll have to work some things with fiscal advisors along with the schedule, whether it's, bands and whatnot, just to make sure you're keeping the debt level as you had anticipated. But adjusting the schedule is certainly a possibility.
Right. Well, I've been waiting to see when to, if the board leans towards accepting anything, my first call tomorrow morning is to fiscal advisors to start the process for the bond anticipation note. Been holding off on that until I saw that we had the real need. As far as debt coming off, I don't have the schedule at home that I can access, but certainly within the next year or two, more debt will fall off. So, if you're thinking, I could look to see if you're thinking about doing anything about having another capital project to add additional funds to this one, doing another referendum, there probably would be room. And, if we did something in the next, possibly in the next 6 months, or year, to add additional funds.
So I want to answer the board member's question regarding the delaying the bid and possibly pushing the project off because it's often brought up with many projects, and trying to time the market, if you will, for a project is from 3
I couldn't hear
to
him.
4% that are going to go up.
I didn't hear a thing.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Now we can't.
If you're not talking, folks, could you please shut your microphone off? I think that helps.
Sorry, you can. I'm trying. Derek, can you hear me or no? Answer. No. Anybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you well. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So I was going down the road of at least trying to describe putting the bid off is a very slippery slope, and trying to time the market that way generally does not work out. If in fact the scope of work that is in this project that you have bid is what the board wants, I would recommend you make the awards to go forward. If the scope of work is not what you want, let that drive the decision as to going back out to bid as soon as possible, but don't delay, because trying to wait for the market is not going to happen in a positive sense. This is going to be a very long and drawn out process to bring the ship back around product wise, because the issue here is not about whether or not the United States can make amends as to providing products. They need to figure out if they're going to manufacture these products, which they don't. Almost half of our mechanical stuff that we need in the way of electronics come from overseas. So there's a lot of mechanical equipment that we are awaiting for, and we're at bay for what others want to charge us. I don't want to see you wait because it's only going to go up in premium. And I don't see this situation getting any better over the next 12 to 18 months. So if it's the scope, that's different. If you want to refine and retool your scope, that's something you should do as a board. But if you're thinking that you're going to time the market and put it off and bid it all at another time, I don't believe that's going to help you.
Oh, I agree.
Isn't the question for tonight whether or not we wanted to go on with Lanigan's site work? I thought that was the issue.
It is the issue, but along with the site work, in order to do the site work, as Carrie explained, we have to do some other work on the building.
Yeah.
To do the site work. And the question is do we want to proceed with the same design for the interior site work at the doors?
Well, if the doors and the windows are going to come to the $10,000, then we're not worried about redesigning the offices, are we?
Well, no, but it does change the scope of what they bid. So, because they bid it out for that whole changing all the offices, Nick. That's what they're saying. So okay. The question I was asking was, could we go back and just do the things that we know we absolutely that need to be done, like the doors are an absolute necessity. We know windows are a necessity in some of these sites, and can we do those things and maybe rethink? Because somehow we've either got to come up with more money or take things out of this project. So that's all I was asking. And if we've got time, I'm hearing we do. I myself think it's worthy of maybe us having more conversation with our architects to figure out what makes the most sense for us under these circumstances.
What impact does that have in terms of the summer months and the availability to do work versus if we delay it, which has a set of positive reasons to support that decision? Would that work then occur when school's in session?
That site work at Lanigan is going to occur when school's in session regardless.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah, even if you were to award tonight, there's no way that they could clear that site and build that parking lot, that turning radius, by Labor Day weekend. Bob, what
Okay.
do you have for a substantial completion date? I imagine probably in November, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think originally we had it early November, late October.
So postponing this decision until your next board meeting, even whether or not you're going to include the Lanigan site work or not, will have, minimal impact on that site schedule. It might slow them down by starting a week or two, but it's still going to be a fall schedule to do that Lanigan site work if you decide to take the Lanigan site work. And between now and then, maybe it buys you time to have some type of, offline meeting to, pick our brains and talk with King and LaChase, a work session or something if that works for you.
My opinion is that we do more discussion on it. I think there's too many variables to do this quickly. I think we should discuss more.
I agree.
I'm good with that.
Me too.
Okay, so I'm thinking that, folks, so the question I have for my colleagues is, do you want to have a workshop or do you want to submit questions and have Nick and I, as Nick and I have been the reps sitting in on all of these meetings, take the questions to the meetings and get answers? How do you want to handle it? I don't know what your schedules are like.
I think we ought to have a meeting.
Yeah.
I like the workshop.
Okay, I think 3 workshops, I think I heard David, Fallon, and Lynn say workshop.
Correct.
That's good.
Okay, all right, then so the next question I have is a date for the workshop. Brian, do you have any dates you want to propose?
Turn your mic on, Brian.
There we go. I'm assuming, never should assume. We're in the middle of trying to get the redesign done too. I mean, obviously next week, any evening we could make work if we needed to. I mean, the 27th, 28th, 20th, I mean, we tend to like Tuesdays as a board. I mean, the 28th, I got to get my eyes looked at 5 o'clock here in Fulton. Other than that, I can, ready to roll here. I don't know if that would work for, but yeah, so I would put out the 28th or 29th, but that's 2 possibilities.
28th is good.
Good for me.
My husband's big birthday. I'm not quite sure I can be there.
29th is fine.
Is he turning 100? No.
Close, he thinks.
I'm good.
Does the 29th work for everybody?
I can do the 29th.
29th is fine.
It'd be better for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about our representatives from King and LaChase? You're kind of important in this meeting. Just saying, I think it's really important to have this discussion tonight. We've had a lot of things and we have, a new board that needs to go through this that hasn't gone through. We have 2 leaders that have been a big part of past projects, but 5 that have not, and a new superintendent. So I think working us through this and taking a little bit extra time is the right thing to do to make sure that our scope is right. So does that work next Wednesday night? Do we want to do a 6 p.m.? 5:30? What time works for everybody?
Either's good for me.
I saw Fallon shake her head. I wasn't sure.
Either works for me.
Okay.
Whatever.
All right.
Yep.
You want to do a 6 p.m.?
Yeah, let's
6 p.m. on the 29th?
Yep.
Okay.
With that, I gotta go. Good night.
Night, Tim. Thanks.
Bye, Tim.
See you later.
Bye, Tim. All right. Very good. Bear with us, LaChase and King. I appreciate it. There was a lot of discussion, but I think we needed to have it with our board and next week, hopefully, and we do have a little bit of time after that, and a scheduled board meeting, no less, too. So that's a good thing. So, all righty. Thank you so much. Any more questions for Capital? And Laird, you got to just watch tonight. Lucky you, huh? Alrighty, guys, thank you. And then on the last part for me this evening is I want to do an update with respect to our reopening update. Just so you know, obviously we're full bore moving ahead. We've been doing focus groups, and Betsy can comment if she'd like to. We also been doing surveys. I will tell you, I think our communities looks forward to them. We sent one out at about 4 o'clock yesterday. And by 5:30, we had 492 responses. And by early this morning, we had, I think, 1,082. It's amazing the feedback we're getting. I think people are waiting for them. The feedback has been very good. And that's been helpful. Tomorrow, we meet with our presidents of each of the unions, bargaining units that we have. That's tomorrow morning. My team's been meeting. We met with all the administrators. We've been breaking down the 145 pages of documents along with others. There's a lot of pieces, but I will say that, and then I'm going to let Bets just comment, but, I wrote a note down here, ultimately the goal of all of this is the safety of our students and our staff and our families, because our staff and our families are not only our kids' families, but the families that we go to home at night too. And we have to make sure, and I thought we showed this morning a Venn diagram on Syracuse.com this morning that showed a person went to one function and then people went to another function and they had a breakout of, I believe, 16. It's amazing how quickly this takes off. And so, again, that conservative approach that comes with me is making sure that we hit all of those musts and we strongly consider every should. And I had the pleasure of Betsy inviting me to a focus group the other night, and I got to sit in. It was so fun for me not to talk and just listen. Betsy, you just want to comment on the focus groups and how powerful they've been? Lost Betsy. Oh, has left to me. I guess we lost her for just a moment. What we have is we've been compiling all of the responses. We've had very good note takers. So we have great responses. The surveys have been giving us great feedback. And what we're trying to do is triangulate all of the data to give us the best information to design a plan that will not be accepted. You will not be happy by 100%. But I think will be a plan that we design that can best serve the needs of the community. And that's the input of our staff and our students and our families in that. I was hoping I could filibuster long enough to get Betsy on there, but we lost.
Brian, I got some questions I can ask while we're waiting.
Sure, go right ahead, Ms. Cooper.
Okay, so my first question is, and this is why I asked, back in May, I was, the news came out saying Clorox wipes and hand sanitizer and all this stuff would be back fully on shelves by July. Well, here it's July, and we're not able to find any of this stuff. How are we on hand sanitizers and wipes and things like that in the district? And how many masks do we currently have on hand? Are we having issues ordering them? What's going on with that?
All right. So the hand sanitizer we've been ordering, I can get a report from Tom Meeker about how much, but we've been ordering that right along to develop an arsenal, as well as cleaning supplies, those types of things. As far as the masks, Mr. Els has been working on that. He actually sent me an email before the meeting. I gave him the charge of finding me 100,000. He does have a price, and that vendor has accessibility. He and I are meeting tomorrow morning. Then we need to go down and march ourselves down and talk to Kathy. Right now, we got them down to a quarter a piece, which is pretty amazing. Can't beat that for the paper masks. I mean, and 100,000 would get us a good start on the way to getting there. And obviously, if that vendor has more, but we have to sit with Kathy and go through that. But you can do the math: 100,000 at 25 cents, 25,000. Yep. And so we've been working on those. He's also been working on shields. We found ones that we didn't like. Thank goodness for extended school year. We found some that we really like and others that are just awful. So we've been able to try those out. We've been getting feedback from our staff with respect to those as well. There has been some conversation with respect to cloth masks as well. There was a district, I believe, in the North Country I read about in the onboard that was looking at the cloth ones as well. But the issue with that is obviously the cleanliness and keeping them clean and all of that. So working on that. And I met with Patrick today and we actually discussed, Patrick, meaning Golden Sun, I'm sorry. For the rest of everybody, you know who I'm talking about when I talk about Patrick, but not our listeners and our observers. And Patrick from Golden Sun and I spoke today, and we were going to discuss, do we want him to pursue for the bus? Because part of those, they have to be available on the buses. If a child comes to the bus site, they get their temperature taken, they do all that good stuff. But then what happens is they don't have a mask. We have to have those available on the buses each and every day. So we discussed that. And they're also using the same cleaning supplies that we're using, trying to keep that consistency for the cleaning for health between school and bus as well. So we've been building our arsenal, Ms. Cooper, as we move forward.
And so here's another question: the state is recommending some type of plastic plexiglass type, barriers and things like that. But I also read an onboard that it is also being discouraged due to fire code violations and not meeting fire code safety. How are we looking into that and dealing with that situation?
So once again, if you look at those, you actually find them online for $150, $250, $350. However, Mr. Crump is having a surgical procedure this week, so he's not with us this evening. However, he and his team actually built them. If you were one of the visitors with us, or you'd like to take a walk sometime through our summer school, I actually observed, we actually have built them ourselves. And I believe Mr. Lisi, I believe they're to the tune of about $30 each. I talked to a speech and language pathologist who happened to be using one with one of our youngsters the other day. She said it works very well. They're about 3 foot by 3 foot, and they're on a holder. They're very stable. And I thought it was, so our team actually had built their own. Is that correct, Mr. Lisi? Am I speaking correctly?
That's correct. Correct. I'm here.
I like the reinforcement.
Yes,
So
Brian.
yes, we're actually building those ourselves, Fallon, because it was one of the things that when we were looking at them, we realized that we may be able to reproduce these at a much lesser cost. And actually, some of the things that we've seen out there are less than stellar as far as their ability to be a lasting product.
Okay, are we able to build those at the numbers that we need? And are those going to fit fire code standards?
We can build, I believe, to scale, Mr. Lisi, what we would need. They don't take very long to build. As far as fire code, I wish Mr. Crump was on. He is a firefighter also on the side. We could check that. That was one of the discussions that we had. So I can check and get an answer for you.
Okay.
On that.
Question. Ken,
Yes.
Are we going to supply each student with a mask every day, a new mask?
We are.
So one of the questions on the survey, hey, Betsy wants to chime in every time, but one of the surveys that we have, one of the questions we have, and let me actually can slide right to it because I left it on my screen this morning. One of the questions we'd asked was, would we need to provide you a mask? And I believe it was almost 70, where is my color coded circles here? 78.8% said that they would provide it. We would not have to. So only 21% of our 1,107 responses indicated that we would have to provide.
It was asked of me today if we were going to supply them.
Yeah, we have to have the paper ones available by guidance. But the feedback that we're getting to our community based on the first 1,100 responses is that approximately 80%, 78.8, are indicating that they would provide the cloth masks at this time.
Good.
It's a great question. I'm glad we asked that question too, because it was a good one.
And one other question is, I was looking through some guidelines and it talked about like extra hand washing and stuff for our students. Now, my concern is a delay in kids going, let's say, from their class to gym class or whatever. Are we looking into putting additional like freestanding sinks or processes for them to wash their hands? Because if we have students trying to go to the bathroom, stay 6 feet apart in line at a time, it's going to cause quite a delay. What are we looking at to help with that situation?
Well, I think one, obviously we're considering all different types of things, But I think the big piece we have to look at is movement based on what we're seeing and all of the guidance is extremely limited. So even if you have students socially distanced in classrooms, our classrooms approximately at social distance are looking at somewhere between 12 and 14 kids at present at any given time, our square footage based on our square footage of classrooms. We've actually had every one of our schools, our principals go out, we provided them maps of the school with the square footage of every classroom, and they were able actually to calculate. So our range is anywhere from 12 to 14 students in the classroom. Also, they're very clear in the guidance with respect to your cohort. In other words, trying to keep your kids together as much as possible and not traveling through the building. They've also had quite a bit of guidance with respect to not using cafeterias. And also in gymnasiums, the issue in physical education is that it's not only 6 feet, it is 12 feet if you're exerting yourself in a phys ed. So there are a lot of other factors there. So what I would say, long-winded answer, is obviously part of that's also the routines that we put in place, and we are going to be restricting movement. That's based on the fact of the guidance that we're receiving from the state at this point in time. So we'll be considering that, Fallon. We've added hand washing, or what do they call them? Hand sanitizer dispensers. As you walk in, if you walked into Lanigan, you'd see one right on the left-hand side inside the main entrance where you sign in next to the greeter station. And there are a number of those placed throughout. We had ordered those way back in February, and they finally started coming in. So we've got those as well. So there's a number of things. Obviously, we'd have to put protocols and procedures to make sure that we don't have backups, because when they go through the halls, they'd also need to be practicing 6 foot.
Brian, is there a requirement for the secondary level that really can't travel in a cohort given their schedule, their the caseload of courses they're taking that forces them to change classes? Is there a requirement to clean in between when students move from room to room?
Yeah. Betsy, you want to answer? I know the answer, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I keep losing connectivity tonight. Dave, you and I being right up down the street from each other, I think we might be having some of the same issues.
The neighborhood.
Exactly. So your question is, do we have to clean? Yes, we would have to clean, but we're looking at alternatives where it would not be traditional high school as we know it, so the change might occur differently. That's what I can tell you right now. So is the answer is yes, you have to clean in between classes, but the way we do a cohort of work, we might be able to get around some of those issues that otherwise we would run into.
Like bringing staff to kids versus kids
staff to kids, or if we have enough classrooms available, we might put kids in one classroom on A, and then on B day, for A, they're in classroom 110. And then for their next class, they go to 112 where there's not been any kids. Does that make sense?
Might be a lab, whatever.
So
yeah, right now we're practicing at summer school. We actually have taught our staff, and I can show you that video. I've actually got it pulled up if it works tonight. Where we've actually got a video. We've trained our staff on how to disinfect. There's a difference between disinfect and clean. Learning so many things. If you ask me as a superintendent, if I'd know the difference. But disinfect, if a student moves from one table to another areas of the classroom, we've got a protocol in place where staff can wipe down that desk, even in the classroom when kids are moving around at all, which you try to minimize. And then cleaning is that more in-depth cleaning at the end of the day. So in between sessions too, we do an AM and a PM session. So our custodians actually go in and clean the classroom between sessions, AM and PM as well. But in the session of like 8 to 10:30, we would actually sanitize the desk versus clean. So
Betsy, I have one more question for you. So given the fact if we're going to be looking at non-traditional schooling for the secondary level, what grades are we looking at considering secondary? Is that
so right now, Fallon, I'm not feeling comfortable that we're ready yet to present that to you.
Okay.
I would like a few more days, and then we will definitely be back to you with that. But right now, we're still working through that. Okay. I'm not dodging the question. I just don't want to speculate when we're still looking at some of the things that we need to consider.
Okay, and then just one last question on this, I promise.
No, that's okay.
the surveys that went out to families, there's a little bit of confusion in the community. Did you want the community to fill that out one per household or one per student? Because a family might have a child at the high school or in one in elementary or UPK. How did you want those surveys filled?
One per student.
Okay, thank you.
That's very important that it's one per student. So help us get that message out. We'd appreciate it.
Okay.
One of the other things that was, go ahead, Beth.
When I lost connectivity before for the focus groups, we're going to be getting you out in the next couple days. What were the top 5 responses to the questions that we asked? We asked people, what were some of the things we have done well since the closure? What are some things you'd like us to relook at or rethink about? And then what would be your wishes or considerations as we prepare for the fall? So we're in the process of writing that up for you, where you'll have the top 5 responses for each of the questions.
Will the board receive a report for what is submitted on the 31st?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and actually, not that I planned this, but it kind of has worked out. One of the things I was going to ask at the end of this presentation was, obviously the next board meeting we had was August 11th. Our goal is, I have set a target date for the 30th, which is next Thursday. And our team really assembling all the parts and pulling all the different work groups and things like that together on the 29th, which is Wednesday. So we could do a pretty good overview on the evening of the 29th, Robin and board members. I would suggest that's a perfect timing for us to give you the latest update, because our goal is to actually submit on the 30th. Why? Because you know what? Because we want a little bit of time in case there was any feedback to give us that extra day on Friday if necessary to make any adjustments. And we have to recognize that this plan is fluid. I think one of the reasons, in fact, we're not even having to upload it into the portal, which is the most interesting thing. We have to do with the assurances in the portal, which is a series of check marks. But the plan will actually be on our website, and the government or the NISA would actually look at our website. They will just look at the link that we make for the state on the assurances. So I would suggest on the evening of the 29th, I'm glad we're starting at 6, is that we focus the first half hour or so, I think is what we really would need maximum, probably with the capital. And then after that, do an update from my team, who's been working extremely hard, provide an update about what it looks like we're going to be submitting out there. And I know that one of the things that people want to know, they want to know yesterday on how we're doing things, but I think this is the best thing we can do. The other piece I would ask Robin and board members, I know, Lynn, you wanted to see the different videos. Do you want me to show any of those this evening, or would you prefer I just made them attachment in tomorrow's daily update? That's a Lynn question. She asked me about it, so I'm responding to a question at the last board meeting. We have a video of how do you clean a desk and the bust, which I could include in your daily update, and those would be part of what would be part of our opening, I would imagine. We're going to refine them a little bit, but they generally are addressing some of the issues we're having to address with the reopening documents as well. So it's the pleasure of the board if you want to watch a little bit of a video tonight. If not, I can share them with you in daily updates.
I game for either.
Sorry, go ahead, Robin.
No, that's fine. Go ahead, Fallon.
I was going to say I'm fine with either, but I would like, if we're going to get it in daily updates, I would like to make sure the public is aware as well. So get it out there.
Yep. So that was a great, you must be reading my mind tonight, Ms. Cooper. You're going to lead me right where I needed to go, which is I was going to ask Mr. Lisi, the most important, all the parts of this are important, but probably the foundation, and you're the one that brings it up the most, so you're the perfect person to bring that up tonight, is communication. And I'm going to have Mr. Lisi share, as now that's part of his role as well. He's going to share the website and what we're doing with that, and that's going to be the platform that we'll be able to, we're going to be getting that going sooner than later. So Mr. Lisi, if you could provide an update, please.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Polvino. Well, if we've learned anything through all this COVID experience, communication is certainly important. And our reliance on digital communication is exponentially more important. So one of the things, this is an update, just one of the things that I wanted to fill you in on a little bit is we've moved quite a bit in terms of getting our new website ready. along with some of the other tools that we had talked about. The communication committee has done some fantastic work in helping us understand how to do this and do it well. And so I just want to take a few minutes to share with you kind of where we are and have you take you're looking at the link already, aren't you? So you're going way ahead of me, and that's just wrong. So let me go through this really quick with you, and we'll get to that link and I'll explain what that is. So I probably haven't shown you the new website yet, correct? Well, a couple of you have probably seen it, but let me just share that with you real quickly here so you can get a sense of what that looks like. Actually, let me do this first, if you don't mind. Bear with me just a second here. So I'm gonna have you do this first. So part of can you see the screen that I'm on right now?
Yeah.
Can everybody see the part? Oh, good. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is, before I show you the website, since you're already on the link, I'll explain that first. So we're going to be rolling out an FCSD smartphone and device app. And what you're looking at is what folks will see on their smartphones or devices. It's actually an app. And the reason why we're rolling that out is because it's a new way that we can share information with our stakeholders. And one of the things I'm excited about is because it's far more efficient than a lot of the tools we're using now. So for example, if you, most of you have used smartphones, you get push notifications or notifications on your apps. Is everybody sort of familiar with that, how that works? Or you can get a phone call, that works too.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the app will allow us to send, if folks put the app on their phone, to be able to actually receive notifications from us if they opt in for that, which is going to be a great way for us to reach folks. And it's also a little bit different than what we're used to doing. What we're using is the Blackboard K-12 communications platform. And what this allows us to do is we've moved away from different platforms to do different things in terms of communication. So we had a separate way of emailing folks. We had a separate way for teachers to communicate with students. We had a separate way of handling social media, and so on and so forth. The Blackboard platform allows us to do all this from one location. So we can now control our messaging from one location to all these multiple platforms. And we can do it very quickly, which we're excited about. So that's their mass notifications tool. And that image that's shown on this page sort of gives you an idea of how that works. And it isn't just about us. I mean, becoming more efficient and sending consistent messaging from the district's important, so that everybody gets the same communication, the same message. But they get it in various different venues, which is important as well. So can everybody see the app on their phone using their link?
Is that contingent upon the information that parents provide to School Tool? Is it linked to School Tool? Is that where that contact information is harvested from?
Good question. If you can just hang on one second, Dave, I'll get to that because that's actually an important piece, if you don't mind. So, but does everybody see the app at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So it looks a little bit different. So if you go to our website now, on our old website, all it does is miniaturize the website. And so it's really hard to see on the phone. But if you look at the app, that's actually geared towards looking at it on a cell phone. In addition to that, will be a teacher communication tool. So right now, our teachers are using a product called Remind, which is a great tool. But again, there's no oversight, and it causes some problems in terms of data and data security. So we wanted to use a tool that's all under this one umbrella, and we'll be providing professional development for teachers to be able to communicate with students and parents more easily. And so we'll be using Blackboard for that purpose as well. Our rollout plan, and Dave, this gets to your question, which is a great one, is how are we going to make all this happen? So the website, we're going to launch this Friday, if all goes well, the new site that we have. So we're excited to do that. Totally different look and feel, which is going to be, it's much easier for parents to navigate. So we're looking forward to doing that, along with the smartphone app on August 3rd. And how we're getting data, one of the things that we found that's important in this whole process is that we're not reaching everyone. And, I often get calls about, I didn't get this email, or I didn't get this communication or message. One of the surveys we'll be sending out shortly will ask folks how they would like to be communicated with under certain circumstances. What's the best way to reach folks? So we want to make sure that our school tool records are accurate, all of our data for parents are accurate, the communication is up to date, so on and so forth. So Dave, to answer your question, yes, but we also want to make sure that in addition to what's in school tool and synced with school tool, we want to make sure that we understand how folks actually want to be communicated with. So we're going to go through that process through the survey. Does that answer your question?
No, I just know the barrier that schools typically have is if parents don't update their email, they don't update their phone numbers, their contact information through the venues that you've shared with us, that the website will reach out to them perhaps. If there's not an accurate database, it's really contingent upon the parent then to keep that current and us to remind them to keep that current.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why we want to survey. We want to reach out to parents. We want to make sure that we have the most updated. I guess the way to look at this is, since we're putting out this new communications venue, I'd like to rip the Band-Aid off and start fresh with reaching out to parents and getting their communication, what they would prefer in terms of communication, and getting their updated data. That's critical.
Tom, when you reach out to parents, how exactly are we planning to reach out to parents?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first thing we want to do is try to do this through a survey. We're learning that our survey response is actually pretty decent, especially over the past couple of days. So that's one way we want to do it. We want to encourage folks to update their school tool information, and we intend to set out information to make sure that happens. We need to really craft a campaign to do this with the understanding it's important that they get information, especially during this period of time. So kind of a multi-mode plan of attack to get this information updated.
Okay.
It's going to be hard to reach everyone, but also, putting the app out there, we hope will help with some of the communication barriers we're running into. We're hoping that folks will do that, and we're going to try to push that as well.
And I know that our schools have sent, in the mailings that we get in August, the information that is currently in school tool, and they give parents an opportunity to review that and to update it. I'm not sure how many do that, if you get a lot of response to that, but I that's really helpful at that point in the school year when we're not overwhelmed with a lot, just to make sure as a parent, to make sure that our information is accurate.
Absolutely. We learn a lot. We learn a lot during snow days, because when we send out the phone call, we get feedback from that, whether it's, I didn't get a call, or don't call me anymore because it's, 5 a.m. We get some interesting feedback from that. So we certainly understand where the barriers are there. So beyond that, we are going to be looking at a full transition to the centralized mass communication tool from Blackboard. And, we want to get good with that. And that's going to take some time to go through that process. So we're working through that right now and trying to understand what that looks like. Most importantly, though, it's going to be about professional development for teachers, understanding. We're going to try and help the community understand how this works. So there's going to be a process of rolling this out. And with any technology and anything like this, it's going to take some time to get there. But that's where we are at this point. So,
Dan, I have 2 questions.
Yep. Sure.
Okay, so first I wanted to do a brag because I was on the communications team, and one of the best features of this is the search feature that was so difficult in the old website. So if you can talk about that for 1 second. And then my other question, I forgot my train of thought, but can you talk about the search function really quick?
Yeah, let's see if I can pull that up so you can see it here. Can you see the website?
Yes.
Great. So this is the new look of the website. Some simple features we didn't have on the old one is this search button up here. So if you want to find something, you can simply search for what you're looking for and actually find it. You would think that's common, but on our current site, we don't have that feature. So, something simple like that. Our site is also ADA compliant now, which is important, and our old site was not. So a lot of those features that we didn't have, we now have. So not to mention the site itself helps brand the district. It's a lot better look for us. But should be live on Friday.
Okay. All right. I forgot my second question. If I remember, I'll bring it up again.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Dom. Thank you very much. What's interesting is on the focus group that I participated on the other night, parents actually talked about the inconsistency of messaging from, like, they had 3 different kids, they had received messaging different ways from different teachers, different ways. And again, I thought that was really important. And this is a way of bringing everything together. And that was a clear message from the communication team. So the communication team did a nice job, I think, anticipating what our community needs and our family needs. So I appreciate all that work. And I think this website reflects that. Dom and I have been looking at what other districts are even putting on their websites around the COVID reopening pieces. And we've got our eye on, a couple. We get bits and pieces of what we think is really good. And we're, like FAQs, things like that we're going to be replicating on our website that I think were very helpful. That was also the feedback that we got. Some of the feedback that I felt was really good. And I don't know if Bets is on there or not. I think she disappeared again, I think. But one of the things that I was really positive was the amount of positivity around our communication. It was just positive. I'm like, well, I was really glad. That was something that I was concerned about. And that was actually very consistent across that parent group. There was 20 parents that night. So I was really appreciative of that. I needed that shot in the arm that night. So that was terrific. So
but Brian, with regard to the communicating with families and them staying current with their data, part of this is going to be us re-educating everyone that this is going to be now the go-to place, especially with anything COVID related. And as we're going to be in and out of different structures, possibly over the course of the year for how we deliver services, the people are going to have to get in the habit of going and checking this and of looking at their, whether it's email or push notices, however they choose, however that works out. And we just have to keep encouraging folks that we are streamlining, and this is how we're going to deliver information consistently. Where we can get up the most current, consistent information. So the committee did recognize that there is a burden of some training on our end to provide to our consumers.
And Robin, that's a good point, because I think we've tried to use multiple vehicles for communication. And while we thought that was a good thing to do, I think it confuses the public for where to look. And I do like that there's one location now, and that we're kind of communicating, this is where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
And Robin, so thank you for bringing that up, because it reminded me of my second question. One thing, and I know I'm guilty of this, so that's why I'm bringing it, is if we're switching to Blackboard and the emails are going to be coming from Blackboard, families are going to need to be aware to make sure that they're putting out either on a safe senders list, so it's not going to spam or junk mail, because I know I've had a lot of things from the district before go right into my spam folder or junk mail folder. And parents aren't going to think of that to go look there off the top of their head. So we need to make sure that we're communicating that as well.
Good point. Absolutely.
All right, well, there's been a lot of work going on I apologize for the link, but there was some real important information to digest and share, and your feedback was essential this evening. And thank you also for your consideration on a meeting on the 29th at 6 p.m. So thank you. And that's the conclusion of the superintendent's report.
Okay, would someone move item 4.01?
Move it.
Second.
Discussion? I am a yes, Mrs. Perry.
Okay. Mrs. Cooper?
I'm a yes.
Mr. Cordone?
Yes.
Mr. DeJarm?
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons?
Yes.
Excuse me. Did I get everybody? Yes.
4.02, please.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Excuse me. Mrs. Cooper?
I'm a yes.
Mr. Cordone?
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. DeJarm?
Yes.
Item 5.01.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Excuse me. Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. DeJarmo.
Yes.
Item 6.01.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mr. DeJarmo, excuse me.
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Item 6.02.
Move it.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? I want to say that I found, I did go and review this e-book and I found it very interesting. I thought it was I think it's a very nice text. Wish I had had access to something like this in my day. That's all I have to say. So Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
very good. Excuse me. Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. DeJarmo.
Yes.
I'd like to batch, if you would, 7.01 through 7.04. Would someone like to move that?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Any discussion on those items? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. DeJarmo.
Yes.
Let's see, board forum. Mr. DeJarmo, you want to start?
Great conversation about the capital improvement. Quite informative, and I'm looking forward to the 29th.
Mrs. Cooper.
I just wanted to thank everybody for answering all of my questions. I know I'm a pain. But I also wanted to personally acknowledge Mr. Murray at the high school. My son is taking college classes and they finally got a text late on a Sunday night at 90-degree weather, and Mr. Murray made all the rounds to the students delivering the text personally. And so I just wanted to recognize him and make sure that we thank him for all of his hard work and making sure our students get everything they need. So thank you. And that is it for me. Thanks, guys.
Mr. Cordone.
Just want to thank the administrative team. I know firsthand how much work you're doing this summer to prepare for the fall, and I really appreciated the parent survey that came out, and I think it's great, the response from the community, and I appreciate the consideration for all that input. Thanks.
Mrs. Lyons.
Just to iterate what Dave says, I've had a lot of feedback from a lot of people saying how they felt about getting the surveys and how important it was to them that they had a say in what was going on. So I just want to thank everybody very much.
And I would piggyback on I had an opportunity to spend a day doing focus groups as an observer. And it was, I found it very informative. I was very impressed with how well the processes were run. Mrs. Connors did a great deal of it, but she had assistants. And when she had to step out, they stepped up and did a great job. People wanted to be heard, and that was clear. And so again, I am grateful that the district administration has taken the time to provide opportunities for people to have their voices heard, and they are reflecting, most importantly, reflecting on all that's been heard. And so for that, I'm grateful. And with that, that brings us to an adjournment. Thank you all for a lot of hard work tonight. Would someone move item 8.03?
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. DeJarmo.
Yes.
Okay, folks, I'll see you next week.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Have a great week.
Good night.